Jehovah's Witnesses aren't that famous individually. In fact, they have for no reason adopted an anti-famous doctrine, constantly remind their followers not to pursue careers that would make them rich and famous, and to reject those offers if they ever appear.
People see only one side of the picture, the fame, the money. The other side is the injuries, disappointments. It's very hard psychologically and emotionally. You have no freedom. That's why it's better to give the very best to the one who appreciates it. What you do for Jehovah will always bring you happiness, joy, and satisfaction.
This is one of the many ways this oppressive religion controls its followers, which is why there's practically no active Jehovah's Witness who is also a celebrity. That, except Serena Williams, of course, is witness in the world. But it's not like the religion is happy about it. After all, she went against the video we just saw, pursuing sports interests instead of spiritual goals, aka working for free for the religion. That's probably why, unlike most Jehovah's Witnesses who get baptized when they're children or teenagers, she got baptized when she was an adult and she had retired from her career. No Jehovah's Witness would consider Serena an example to follow, because she's still somewhat famous and because she doesn't follow Jehovah's Witnesses' rules of dress and grooming. That's why, unless she stops attending public events and is willing to say that the Jehovah's Witnesses cult is literally better than her entire sports career, she's unlikely to ever be featured on JW broadcasts or any other Jehovah's Witness indoctrination video.
I want to describe to you my fantasy of perfect children.
Brother! Sister! Hi, Junior. How was your day today?
Oh, it was a blessing. Let me tell you. I was out spreading the good news of God's kingdom with all the neighbors. I ran from 3 dogs and got lots of doors slammed in my face, but I'm happy. Do you know why?
Why?
Because it's the right thing to do.
Hey, why don't you take some time off from your busy schedule and watch some television with me?
Oh, no! That's the devil's playground. TVs, movies, video games, it's all bad. I'm gonna go upstairs and get an article for you, right after I take my nap.
The Wayans brothers, including Keenen Ivory Wayans, Damon Wayans, Marlon Wayans, and Sean Wayans, had a more traditional Jehovah's Witness upbringing than Serena before becoming a talented and influential family in the entertainment industry. Known for movies like White Chicks and Scary Movie, few people know that the Wayans brothers were actually raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, unlike most Jehovah's Witnesses who are born into a family that's fully committed to the religion, the Wayans brothers only had their dad as the Jehovah's Witness, which is why I think they ended up pursuing fame, something strictly forbidden in the religion. The only one who I could find who is still an active Jehovah's Witness is Damon Wayans, which is probably why he has avoided joining his brothers in their more risque films that they have produced.
So on Sundays, I would go pioneering, the term used for the missionary work that Jehovah's Witnesses do. And it was then that I was able to see the magic of other people's childhood. And we would spend the day in the suburbs of Southern California, going door to door or making the rounds of shopping malls, distributing our Watchtower magazine.
Michael Jackson had an abusive father that hugely affected his childhood, but little is ever said about the huge impact that the Jehovah's Witnesses had on his life and on his musical career. Katherine Jackson converted to the religion when Michael was only 5 years old, right before he started performing, and he was considered a Jehovah's Witness until his mid-20s. Once he left, he was allowed to talk negatively about the religion, something every follower is strictly forbidden to do. He spoke about how it was being raised as one of them, affecting the person who he would grow up to become, someone with no friends and with no childhood. While he had to tour, he also had to hire someone whose sole task was to locate a Kingdom Hall ahead of him in each town, so he wouldn't miss a single meeting every week, regardless of where he was. I'll link to a video that goes in depth on exactly what Michael Jackson would have been learning as a Jehovah's Witness and how that could repress his sexuality, just like in every member of the religion, and much more below. But I couldn't move away from Jackson without mentioning how the Jehovah's Witnesses almost prevented one of the best music videos from ever existing. The Jehovah's Witnesses are extremely against anything that could have any remote connection to magic or to the occult, even in the most benign thing.
Look at Sparlock's magic key.
Caleb, what toy is that?
It's Sparlock, the warrior wizard.
Whoa, a warrior wizard. Who likes magic? Jehovah or Satan?
Satan.
Right. Magic is bad. That's why Jehovah hates it. Do you really want to play with something that Jehovah hates? Caleb, I am so proud of you.
So imagine how scandalous it would have been when the elders got wind of the fact that Michael was developing a film about the occult in the form of thriller. This isn't speculation. It's well documented that Michael regretted making the video and continuously asked for it to be destroyed before it was published. Even after the video had released, the religion got him to publicly apologize essentially in one of their magazines, talking about how he actively blocked further distribution of the film, preventing it from being as famous as it could have been. LaToya writes in her memoir that she believed Michael wasn't just an ordinary Jehovah's Witness, but one of the 144,000 anointed witnesses that get to rule with Jesus in heaven when they die. Although doesn't say whether Michael believed this or not. She also describes how he still preached to people door to door, wherever he was, and implies he felt guilty for being idolized, since openly admiring musical idols putting up posters and whatnot is considered idolatry and is also forbidden to Jehovah's Witnesses. Michael only separated from the religion when LaToya, his sister, got disfellowshipped, and therefore Michael became forbidden from having contact with her, since people in the religion cannot have contact with disfellowshipped people. Michael refused to shun his sister and later disassociated from the religion. But it doesn't seem, at least to me, that Michael took the time to ever unravel his beliefs and realized that he had been in a cult all this time. On the contrary, he seems to have suffered when he celebrated his first Christmas.
It is 1993, and this will be Michael Jackson's very first Christmas. It has taken me, I would think, about 5 years of talking him into celebrating Christmas at Netherlands, because I understood that if you are a Jehovah's Witness, they don't celebrate Christmas. When he quit being a Jehovah's Witness, I said to Michael, I think Christmas is a wonderful way of celebrating love. It's a celebration of love.
The time is exciting. I felt guilty too at the same time. I remember going in the bathroom crying later because I felt I had done something wrong, because I was raised not to ever celebrate it.
Feeling guilty undoubtedly, because it goes against the Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs to celebrate it. And remember, he left the religion not because he disagreed with the doctrine, but because he didn't want to shun his sister. I've read a lot about Michael Jackson, and I am almost convinced that at least for years after his disassociation, he still lived indoctrinated. And it doesn't seem to me like he truly ever realized that he had been raised in a dangerous, high control group, perhaps never fully waking up.
What about, would you like to be buried in something like this?
No, I don't ever want to be buried.
Really?
No.
What would you like to happen to you?
I would like to live forever.
And I think this is why he never properly, publicly spoke out against the religion, because he never got fully rid of his indoctrination. And I think that's a shame, because that means that the religion still had a hold on his life. When, if he had woken up, he could have been the most powerful ex-Jehovah's Witness, showing better than anyone the horrors in the religion.
Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get my next guest out, shall we? He is a fantastic actor from The Hobbit, Fast and Furious, and from the stunning new dystopian thriller High Rise, based on the great British novel by J.G. Ballard. It is Mr. Luke Evans, ladies and gentlemen.
Luke Evans is a super famous and super handsome gay actor, well known for being in all kinds of movies. What few people know is that he had to start his entertainment career by leaving his Jehovah's Witness home at 16 to pursue his dreams. He even claims that the constant rejection that he experienced as a young child helped him develop thick skin.
You know, we're talking to Shazia about her upbringing, and she had a fairly strict religious upbringing, and you were raised as a Jehovah's Witness, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
And was that were there strict
it's
rules
very
there?
strict. Yeah, it's quite a strict upbringing, and, you know, we knock doors on the weekends, and you get a lot of doors slammed in your face. It's quite an experience for a young child to experience that, but I am truly, you know, I've got thick skin now. It's as an actor, it worked in my favor, really.
In an interview with The Guardian, he talks a little bit more about how much he disliked the experience. He says, "I was often looked as a leper by kids at school because I was a Jehovah's Witness. They didn't like it. You were weird. And on Saturday mornings, you'd be knocking at their doors. I remember standing there with my mom and dad thinking, oh my God, I know whose doors this is, and I'll have to see them on Monday. It was terrible." And although he doesn't go into it, being an openly gay man would have definitely gotten him kicked out of the religion, and only adds to the reasons he might have felt he needed to leave his home to pursue his dream.
So Sherry, all you need is 46.
Come on, Sherry.
If you don't get these 46 points, you're gonna be on YouTube.
Shepard is a comedian and former co-host of The View who, as far as I know, is the most famous ex-Jehovah's Witness to ever bring attention to the dangers of the religion. She even talks about how she wasn't allowed to go to college, and instead how to go pioneering for the religion, because Armageddon was coming.
No, I didn't go to college because I was a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay,
And
wait a minute.
Yes.
Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe it?
Well, back then, we were discouraged from doing higher education.
Really? I never knew
Yeah,
that.
so I don't know how it is now because I haven't been a Jehovah's Witness in a long time. But back then we were discouraged from, because it was about going in field service, and so I had the grades and I could have gone to college. I was an A plus, B minus student, but I couldn't go to college. So I always wanted to. So literally after graduation, it was like, I was looking at going into pioneering. That's what it's called as a Jehovah's Witness. You're a full-time pioneer, full-time, knocking on the doors. And so that didn't work out for me. Even still, like my dream would be to get my degree from a Spelman or a Howard University from an HBCU.
And she even went to the same Kingdom Hall as the most famous Jehovah's Witness.
Now, we still went to the Kingdom Hall. It's called not being active. So
Gotcha.
we didn't go out and service and do all of that stuff. Do you know Michael Jackson and the Jacksons? We all went to the same Kingdom Hall.
Are you serious?
Michael would go be in the library when we had our services. But Janet and LaToya and Catherine, we were all at the same Bible study. Isn't that funny?
That is funny.
So Reevie would always ask me when I was on The View. She came on The View one time and she called me. She said, when are you coming back home? Which is, when are you coming back to be a Jehovah's Witness?
She also opened up in a podcast about having to shun her own father after being disfellowshipped by the religion and how that broke her family apart.
Yeah, I got in trouble when I lost my virginity. I got in trouble being a Jehovah's Witness when I lost my virginity. I remember the elders questioned me for probably 2.5 to 3 hours.
They questioned you?
They questioned me. It was 3 older men.
Well, how did they find out that you lost your virginity?
Girl, because my sister read my diary.
Oh,
took my diary, the pages, tore them out, and took them to my mother. She took them to the elders. It was very traumatic because I was a young teenager, and they had my father sit there.
Oh,
and that was really traumatic to be questioned by 3 very old men in the congregation about losing something that was so beautiful that I thought at the time. To be questioned over and over and over in front of your dad. It was humiliating. That was one of the things that just kind of made me shy away. And then they disfellowshipped my dad, who was working 3 jobs to take care of us. He asked a lot of questions.
Wait, why did they disfellowship
My father
your mother?
didn't just take what you said as the golden rule. He wanted to know why, until he was satisfied. And he asked a lot of questions, and, he didn't accept certain teachings from the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they disfellowshipped him. And I was told, I don't talk about this a lot, so it's like now coming back to me, I was told as a young girl, we had to stop talking to him, even though he lived in the house. So my dad worked as a waiter at Denny's in the suburbs of Chicago where they were very prejudiced. And we walked in, and my two sisters told him, we can't talk to you anymore. And I remember my father breaking down crying because that was his second job, and he worked 3 to take care of us.
The church was telling you
They told us we could not talk to
your own father?
To my own father. So we had to not talk to him in the house, and to see my father break down and cry. And I think that kind of was the last straw, because I felt in the Bible says the greatest of these things is love. And you're telling me that the man that I love, who's giving everything to take care of me, I can't talk to. I can't have anything to do with my dad. And my parents got divorced because of that. But that was another thing that kind of drove me away from the Jehovah's Witnesses.
And although she still retains her faith in God, and she has said things that I don't personally agree with, I just have to appreciate the fact that she has used her platform to talk about the damage shunning causes in this religion.
Hey, it's the Rap City thing here live with my man, Biggie Smalls, the notorious B.I.G.
What up?
himself. What's up, dog? What's up?
Very few people know this, but Biggie, aka Christopher George Latour Wallace, was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. There's very little information about how or when he left, but his mom remained a Jehovah's Witness. And you can see a heartbreaking story about Biggie sending his mom flowers for Mother's Day, and her reminding him that they don't celebrate Mother's Day or birthdays.
What's your greatest memory of spending Mother's Day?
Mother's Day is every day to me. I am one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Birthdays, every day is a birthday for me. But I can remember one Mother's Day that I will never forget. That he sent some flowers. And I asked him, why did you send these flowers? He said, it's Mother's Day. And you don't celebrate Mother's Day, but I do. And another package came. And it was chocolate and a bottle of champagne. I never called him because I didn't, want to, do not celebrate Mother's Day, so why are you doing this?
Her mother actually refused to listen to Biggie's music until after his death because of its profanity, since Jehovah's Witnesses are prohibited from listening to music with any kind of vulgar language. Although Biggie seemed to completely leave his Jehovah's Witness past well before he became famous, it's heartbreaking to get a peek into how much the religion interfered between him and his mom and kept them from having a closer relationship.
Real quick, at what age did you give up being a Jehovah's Witness?
Was she a Jehovah's Witness?
I didn't know she was Jehovah's.
I didn't know that either.
She goes, I was 13.
13?
Yeah.
What made you want to do it?
I just don't like elitism.
Michelle Rodriguez is another actress who follows the same pattern of leaving the religion while young and still maintaining a relationship with her Jehovah's Witness family. She has even talked about coming out to her parents as bi, and her parents learning to accept it, which is practically unheard of in the Jehovah's Witness religion.
Family is Jehovah's Witness. That's a whole other table. I mean, birthdays and Halloween and celebrating Halloween are like evil. I didn't get to watch Disney movies till I was in my teens. Oh, because of all the witchcraft. Wow. So that's a whole other ball of wax there. Wow, Michelle.
But again, although the religion is directly against her lifestyle and persecutes people like her out of the religion, she has criticized the religion very sparingly, probably due to a combination of leaving decades ago and having family members still in the religion, who would probably be offended if she spoke out against it.
Tejano USA, like I said, we've got all the big artists. Guess who we got here? Selena Quintanilla. Selena, bienvenidos a Tejano USA.
Thank you, Waldo. Nice to be here.
Selena is extremely famous, although not for her Jehovah's Witness history. Like Michael Jackson, she was a believer while she was famous, although she was very secretive about it. This changed due to the clothing she was so famous for designing for herself. Jehovah's Witnesses are extremely conservative and don't wear anything that shows more skin than absolutely necessary, so she became inactive in the religion after that. However, unlike Michael Jackson, she never officially separated from the religion. In fact, her funeral was a Jehovah's Witness funeral, with an elder from Lake Jackson giving the usual funeral speech about the religion. After she was shot, she got a blood transfusion in the efforts of saving her life, which angered her father, since Jehovah's Witnesses are against blood transfusions, even when they can save their lives.
For 26 years, I have read on social media people criticizing me that Selena died because I didn't want to give her blood, that it was religious fanaticism. And they are incorrect, completely incorrect. Selena was given blood by the doctor when she arrived at the hospital, at the emergency room after she was shot.
Her parents, still Jehovah's Witnesses, believe that they will see Selena again after Jehovah brings the end of the world and kills everyone who isn't an exemplary Jehovah's Witness, right before bringing paradise.
Cause I am Jehovah's most secret witness, so I might have to dedicate my life to Christmas and act just like I love it till the day I die.
Donald Glover is a very talented, multifaceted artist who was also raised a Jehovah's Witness and who still has a believing Jehovah's Witness family. Famous for being Childish Gambino and for his portrayal of Troy, the Jehovah's Witness in Community. His experience in the religion informed the character, who doesn't act strictly as a Jehovah's Witness. Donald Glover says he thinks Troy is slowly realizing that maybe he doesn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness, which I find kind of hopeful. Despite, like most people of this list, not talking openly against the religion, Donald still remembers his sheltered Jehovah's Witness upbringing and how lucky he is for having parents that support him no matter what, which is extremely uncommon in the religion.
Also, I was like raised Jehovah's Witness, so I didn't have a lot of things growing up, like a lot of things from the world, like I didn't have birthdays, and I also think that's a religion thing, but it also, like, with a bunch of kids, my mom was like, that's a lot of money to save.
Magic the Gathering.
No Magic the Gathering, definitely. No Magic Johnson. No, like, no Magic Kingdom. No Magic Kingdom.
How do your parents feel about, like, the job you do now? Is that okay with the strictures of being witness?
I think, no. They're the best parents ever. Like, they're really good. I was talking to them last night, like, and they're super proud of me.
For the most part, he seems happy to put that life behind and to not think too much about it. Although his upbringing does show up every now and then in his art, if you know where to look.
Too much power ain't enough power. Brain splatter like I'm falling off a watchtower.
Always felt misunderstood, I guess I have to tolerate my swag. Jehovah's Witness dude that never take a holiday.
Thank you for taking the time out. Let me say that first officially.
My pleasure.
A certified platinum album, a sold-out concert tour. Are you wowed by the performance of your performance so far?
Well, we sort of expected it.
Prince is probably the most famous Jehovah's Witness after Michael Jackson. But unlike Jackson, Prince died fully committed to the religion after converting in 1999.
What's your definition of your own destination?
I would say this complete oneness with the Spirit of God and knowledge of the truth. Larry and I have been, he's been so kind as to help me with a lot of things that I didn't quite have a firm grip on. There's a lot of temptation out in the world, and it can confuse you and get you wrapped up in something that keeps you from the truth. But with a loving brother like that by your side, usually you do all right.
We have a very close relationship. We spend a lot of time digging deep into the truth and deep into gaining more knowledge and drawing closer to our Creator, and that's very, very important. And then as a result, then you become closer to people around you that you love and that love you.
You can just see how even though Prince always remained true to his flashy self, Larry Graham, who introduced Prince to the religion, immediately dressed as a Jehovah's Witness, even in that interview. Like, I'm sorry, you're gonna be next to Prince and you're wearing that, like, seriously? Although a Jehovah's Witness converting in their adulthood is very unusual, it kind of makes a little bit more sense when you realize that Prince was raised a Seventh-day Adventist, and the Jehovah's Witnesses borrow a lot of theology from them. I think that's why the Jehovah's Witness theology made sense to Prince, because maybe it just sounded familiar to him. Prince even took his wife to the elders to get their advice in April 2005 when they began having problems, something every Jehovah's Witness is instructed to do. Look for the elders' help when you have problems, even when they're marital problems, despite the elders having no qualifications to give any kind of marital advice. In fact, when Prince passed away in 2016, his funeral speech was given at a Kingdom Hall, where they, like always, used his death to try to get people into the religion. And this leads to the main thing that I wanted to talk about. Despite having some of the most famous people in the world among its rank, including arguably the most famous person ever, the religion has still managed to fly under the radar. Forget about Tom Cruise and Scientology. The Jehovah's Witnesses have the most famous superstar of all times, Michael Jackson. Everybody knows about Tom Cruise and Scientology, and yet nobody knows about Michael Jackson and the Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's because, as we mentioned before, Jehovah's Witnesses despise famous people, thinking you can be guilty of idolatry if you admire someone famous too much. That's why when Jehovah's Witnesses become famous, they either leave or they become extremely secretive about their involvement in the religion, because they know they aren't exemplary Jehovah's Witnesses. The Jehovah's Witness theology is so corporate and so secretive that it has managed to be undetected as the dangerous cult it is, despite having the most famous person in the world among them at one point. And that's why, despite it being an apocalyptic cult that believe that God will destroy anyone who isn't a perfect Jehovah's Witness, while also hiding a huge database with thousands of child abusers from the police, most people will only ever know Jehovah's Witnesses as the smiling Bible people that go door to door.